What I'm going to talk about is a continuation from where Manish left off, and it will include both the pre-operative, intra, post-operative evaluation with radiological armamentarium, predominantly the ultrasound and the Doppler. I will also briefly touch upon the use of a CT venogram in the evaluation of a fistula. And I will lastly discuss the factors which affect the maturation. To all the residents listening in, I would like to emphasize that you need to understand that the vascular access is a circuit. It begins in the heart and it ends in the heart. You don't see the whole issue as an artery and a vein, which is what we tend to narrow it down to. And when you do that, you find that you probably will have a lot more failures. So understand that it is a circuit. Uh, Leave it there, and we'll get on to the evaluation. Every single word on this slide is essential. Pre-operative ultrasound by the operating surgeon. So it is to be done before you take the patient in for surgery. You cannot be doing an ultrasound on the table and deciding what you want to do. Uh, it should be done by the operating surgeon and not by somebody else, because then you don't want unwanted surprises. If you have a very good radiology colleague who can help you out by showing you the anatomy, well and good. But if you're able to develop the skill to perform your own ultrasound, it probably is far better. As urologists, we all have done our ultrasounds on the kidney, and we're quite proficient in doing our ultrasounds for the kidney. So I think it's just a matter of practice to start performing the ultrasound for the access work. And if you're able to hone your skills there and further it by adding the concept of the Doppler, I think we'll go a far way in changing the outcomes of our fistula. What do we expect when we perform a preoperative ultrasound? We're looking at the venous system, we're looking at the arterial system, and of course, like I said, you need to probably have certain information whether the patient has had previous cardiac surgeries, like Manish pointed out in clinical, and see if the patient has had an echo and what are the ejection fractions. But in the periphery, you're looking at vein diameters, compressibility, vein narrowing, any thrombosis, and drainage patterns. And that will kind of decide where you want to do your fistula. Arterial diameters, obvious arterial sclerosis should be, very easily discernible. And anomalies in terms of either aneurysms anywhere, high division of the artery is something which you should be able to easily pick up when you perform your own ultrasounds. Uh, when you do an ultrasound, you preferably want to do it in a warm room. You don't want a peripheral vasoconstriction. There must be adequate light. Presumably, you have completed the clinical examination, which Manish spoke about before you do the ultrasound, to be done with and without a tourniquet. Uh, if your patient is already on hemodialysis, I would suggest to do it on the pre-hemodialysis day so that he has some volume loading and he's a little above his dry weight so that the veins are easily distended. At least use an ultrasound if you cannot complement it with a Doppler. And please, heaven's sake, document your plan in the file, document an alternative, and consent and discuss the outcomes of your fistula at this point, not after you've had trouble and not after you've had complications. If you look at the KDOQI 2019 guidelines, this has now been termed as the ESKD care plan for the patient. So not only should you have a single plan, you should probably better have a plan for the coming years for this patient. So that is how we do our Dopplers in the clinic. That's when I was in Bangalore. So you can see the machine, you can see the Doppler being done on the patient. I probably would have also finished a clinical examination. And like I said, document your findings in the file. A small diagram would be helpful so that you are able to recollect the same when you see the patient in theater. They could be easily, in our hospital, I think the average waiting time for a fistula is 9 days. But there have been enough papers across the world where they've suggested that a 1 month time is probably not unusual. So when you you'll see the same images. Manish and me share the same image bank. So that's the same gentleman whom we chose for. You're not going to find veins like this. You're not going to find veins like this either. What you will be finding is somebody like this. That's the simplest case that you will get sent to you if you're somebody interested in access. A typical Indian female obese patient who probably has already had one access failure and who's in your clinic with an arm of this size. I don't have the image. I mean, I didn't put the image here, but her upper arm circumference is 42 centimeters. That's as big as some of the muscle people who do bodybuilding. So this is the least simple case you will get. Or you might be seeing a patient like this. So this is a gentleman who was sent to me saying, can you please create an access for this chap? So you can see the same patient, right and left arms, every single access point which Manish has spoken about is used. In addition, he's had multiple subclavian catheters. He's on his last catheter, which is being placed on the right side. So if you don't have an ultrasound to evaluate this patient, you just cannot get away with a clinical examination alone. What does the KDOQI actually say about using ultrasound for evaluation? Look at what they said in 2006. It should be performed for any hemodialysis access placement by using an ultrasound Doppler in the upper arteries, upper extremity arteries or veins. And then look at the statement change 13 years down the line. This was the KDOQI has come out with its brand new guidelines last year after a long gap of a decade. And you can see that it is advised that it is performed in patients with high risk access failure rather than a routine for every patient who's undergoing vascular access mapping. But look at the quality of evidence and recommendation. It's a low quality evidence and recommendation. So at least for personally, I would probably do a vein mapping for every patient I would take up to theater. I don't want to be having surprises. What are the high risk patients that you would want to do an Doppler for, or an ultrasound for, if you want to do it? So, like I said, females, very elderly, pediatric patients. Manish spoke about somebody who had coronary issues earlier. Those have had multiple PICC line insertions. Patients who have had prolonged or multiple catheters, like what I showed you. Somebody who is morbidly obese. So, I would definitely do an ultrasound for these patients to look at what's happening. So let's just quickly look at a small ultrasound video as to how I do it. So this is the cephalic vein in the cubital fossa. You can see the brachial artery there. You can see a tributary branching off medially. I'm going down towards the wrist. You will soon see the radial bone coming up here. That's the margin of the radius which is appearing. This is the cephalic vein in the forearm. I'm tracing it down towards the wrist. Now I'm going to compress this against the radius. You can see it's very compressible. That's the branch which goes onto the wrist, the dorsum of the wrist. This is the lowermost point you can create a radiocephalic. Any lower, you would have to create a cubital or anatomical snuff box fistula. Sorry. So here we have the, so once you're done with the vein evaluation, you've seen where the branches are, you know where the tributaries are, you know what the drainage pattern is. Start looking at the artery. So we're going to reverse the mechanism, the direction. We're going to go from the radius upward towards the cubital fossa. And this is the radial artery. Same patient. So nice artery, no arteriosclerosis, a good sized artery. You trace it all the way up. You can see it fusing with the ulnar as you're approaching the cubital fossa. You can see the size increase there. So that's where it's fusing with ulnar. It's fused with ulnar, and you go up, it's becoming superficial and becomes reasonably well palpable in the cubital fossa. So you will be able to measure your artery and vein sizes. Try to float on the surface of the skin. It's a skill you learn as you keep doing more and more Dopplers. Otherwise, you will tend to compress the vessel and get poor vessel sizes. So let's look at how thrombophlebitis looks when you perform an ultrasound. I'm just going to quickly scroll through this to get you to the correct point. So you can see here, I'm trying to search medially and laterally. I really cannot find any other vein in this patient. The only vein which is there is this single vein which you see here, and If you remember the previous video I'd shown, I'm compressing the vein here, you can still see a thickness in the vein. Not the vein I'd shown you earlier, where you could absolutely find no vein left when I compress. That's the artery. I'm moving more laterally and I still cannot see any vessels. Look at the vein. You can easily compress it. There's nothing left there. You can't see anything. No residual size to measure. But in a thrombophlebitic vein, you'll be very clearly able to identify thickness in the vessel wall. You definitely do not want to be doing a fistula. You can see here, you can see the thickened walls there. You don't want to be doing a fistula in this kind of vein. Even the other tributaries are all being used up for cannulation or maybe infusing IV fluids, which is most common in most of the patients whom you end up seeing. If you look at arteriosclerosis, you will find the calcific patch. You can see this patch, which is on the posterior side, is otherwise fine. If you find it on the anterior aspect, probably will cause a little trouble for you when you create a fistula. So you might ask, what is the advantage of doing all this prior to creating a Doppler other than just finding out the site where you want? This is our data way back 7 years ago when we really said we're going to aggressively use ultrasound and Doppler for our patients. Left column is about 50 patients who underwent a fistula without ultrasound Doppler by the operating surgeon. The right half is patients who underwent routine preoperative vascular mapping and Doppler by the operating surgeon. As you can see, on table success pretty much the same. Failures pretty much the same. No difference in primary patency. We didn't do any lesser or more transpositions. But what I want to draw your attention are these two numbers, which are pretty significant. Group B represents patients who did not have any additional procedures performed at the time of fistula creation, which means we didn't encounter unwanted thrombosis. We didn't have to mobilize the vein. We didn't have to suddenly find narrowings in the vein higher up and then go and do an additional procedure like a vein patch or a diversion. So you can see a significant drop in the number of patients requiring these ancillary procedures. And look at the number of distal fistulae which have been done. So there's a significant jump here too. We all agree, as we have the highest number of diabetic patients across the world, and we're just going to go see more and more of these patients in India. The dialysis vintage of these patients is going to be extremely long. You don't want to use up all their vascular anatomy and have only options left maybe for a graft. So if you're able to create distal fistulae for them, that would be an excellent option and save any venous anatomy. And this is borne out, this just not our literature. If you go and look at literature even today, the very same thing is borne out. The KDOQI very clearly states no change in primary patency rates if you do a Doppler prior hand, but all ancillary procedures are reduced. So I hope this was not a small emphasis on the use of ultrasound. Let's move on to how you can use ultrasound intraoperatively and postoperatively. So I'm going to cover a bit of Doppler here. I very routinely use Doppler. I've been using it for the last 6 to 7 years, and it has made a huge difference in the way I practice and offer care to my patients. What all can you plan for? You can do an operative planning, you can assess immediate outcome, and you can assess various factors in maturity. I'm just going to give you just 2 examples of how operative planning can change. So here's a patient who came to us for a fistula. You can see a beautiful cephalic vein in the forearm. And if you were to place a tourniquet in the mid-arm, you would not notice that all the cephalic vein drains into tiny muscular branches in the upper arm and disappears. There is no further drainage here. The only drainage for this vein is the deep drainage of the forearm. So if you performed a fistula, it probably would mature, but with the decreased number of outflows, it is very likely that this fistula may not mature. Or if you have problems in the segment of the vein here, you really have no cephalic left to fall back on. But contrary to that, he has a very beautiful basilic vein on the anterior aspect of which happens to be on the anterior aspect of the arm. So we went ahead and created a radiobasilic for him, matured very well, and he's using this for his dialysis now. So it can change the way you plan your surgery. You don't have to necessarily have the same options which are described in literature. When it comes to, say, post-operative management, here's just an example. A patient who was referred to us after a radiocephalic fistula is not maturing, all retrograde flow. obstruction in the upper arm because of stenosis. Again, no cephalic in this patient, only a basilic drainage. So you're looking at either a forearm graft or you're ending up going to be using a basilic for this patient. But instead, if you had an ultrasound to evaluate this, what we did was identify the segment, open it out, and do a free vein graft for this. And this patient 2 years down the line is still using this fistula for his hemodialysis. So this is the way your operative planning can completely change if you use a Doppler. You can decide this beforehand and before going into theater as to what your plan is and what the options are. Moving on to intraoperatively, a preoperative central vein assessment, if you're able to do it, very good. You should be able to show phasic variation in the axillary or subclavian veins. If you do not have the skills to do it, get your radiologist to help you out and show you the phasic variation, which means to say the central veins are patent. Many a time, these patients come in with thrombosis in the IJV because of catheters which have been placed earlier. You're probably better off getting a CT venogram to look at whether the extension of thrombus into the brachiocephalic vein. So a very focused outcome evaluation on table. Manish told you about the clinical ways you can predict whether this fistula is going to work. How can you say that on table, my fistula is not going to give me trouble in the evening? So I do a Doppler on table for every single patient. So this is a Doppler of the brachial artery, pre-creation of the fistula. And you can see it's a typical triphasic pattern. The flows are around 52 mils per minute. Look at what happens when you finish creating the fistula in the same patient. A completely changed pattern. It now becomes a biphasic pattern. The RI has completely dropped down, like what should happen. So very low peripheral vascular resistance, a flow which is already 400 mils and should mature very quickly. So if you don't see this change in your flow patterns immediately post-op, you know you're heading into trouble on table itself. So this is an example of our patient who had his fistula very quickly thrombosed on table. And you can see the flow has returned to its prior triphasic pattern, flow a little higher, but has dropped down to 110. We did an on-table declot. You might say that this looks like a very good flow. Look at the flow. It's 617 mils per minute. You would wonder that it's actually pretty good enough to dialyze the patient. But if you see the pattern, it still retains the triphasic pattern of an artery. So I was really not happy with the way this flow pattern looked. And just wait for 10 minutes. Same patient, you can see the flow has dropped to 340. And the flow is more or less coming back to the triphasic arterial pattern. So you can easily predict that this is not a fistula which is going to remain open. You can have a candid discussion with the attenders, the relatives, including the patient, and say, well, I don't think this fistula is going to hold on or stay open for a long time. And predictably, this fistula clotted and he had to come in for another fistula. So that's how I do my fistulas on table, a Doppler for every single case and an ultrasound for every single case, and it's documented. If we just quickly look at the Doppler images now, this is what is called as a spirolaminar flow. You need to demonstrate this on table. It means to say that it is not a turbulent flow in the vein. If you don't demonstrate this, then very likely you're going to have to keep a close eye on the fistula to see if it's going to mature well. The same spirolaminar flow after many months of use of dialysis, you can see a very nice, clearly demarcated, what I call a Pepsi can sign, showing that there's a very nice spirolaminar flow in this fistula and not a turbulent flow. You can use it to the ultrasound to assess all the lumps and bumps which present early on. Here's a patient 2 weeks down, developed a swelling. You can easily see the flow in the pseudoaneurysm which is occurring. Stenosis assessment. The vein is stenosed here, a beautiful spiral flow in the vein in the dilated segment. And by the time you come to the stenotic area, a very turbulent flow. So not only do you have ultrasound to tell you it's narrow, you also have the Doppler telling you that you're looking at stenosis. You could use it for marking out veins for your dialysis technicians and nurses and tell them the areas which you want to cannulate in certain patients where the vein is deep. And maybe in infiltrations, wait for the vascular interventional radiologist to finish his work in the area where you want rest and continue using the fistula in other areas. So having covered this, just quickly, I'm going to discuss exactly 2 cases on the use of CT venogram, where I'm going to tell you and show you where you can use it in all these kinds of patients. Patients with multiple PICC lines, tunnel catheters, cardiac pacing wires, multiple previous AV fistulas and grafts, multiple previous endovascular interventions, or a complex head and neck graft which is being planned. So example one is a 76-year-old gentleman who was on dialysis for the last 10 years, has used up his left radiocephalic, has used the left brachiocephalic and closed, now is on a right radiocephalic with multiple aneurysmal dilatations and stenosis, undergoing multiple fistulograms and plasties every 3 months, was referred to us for a creation because of imminent access failure on the right side. We clinically and after ultrasound decided to create a left brachioaxillary graft. But because he met all the criteria I just showed you, we obtained a CT venogram. And I want you to pay attention, if you can see, to the subclavian artery here. We had planned the left side. You can see the amount of calcification and stenosis in the vessel here. So obviously, this gentleman is not an ideal candidate to create a left brachioaxillary graft. It probably would not mature, or the flows would be so low that it would clot. So he went and got a right brachioaxillary graft and was able to use it 3 days post creation of the graft. Remember, we picked up an inflow stenosis while we were looking for an outflow stenosis. So this is an incidental finding. You could find a lot of things like this which may alter your planning in a fistula. Outflow stenosis. Look at the catheter on this side. This gentleman has a left, IJV catheter. He has a cardiac pacemaker, which is going to come up here. Here's the pacemaker, which is implanted subcutaneously. Here's the pacemaker wires, which you can see in the cardia. The pacemaker wires are entering through the subclavian vein. The catheter is entering. I'm going to stop it here a little more, I guess. Yeah. So the catheter is entering through the subclavian, through the IJV and into the brachiocephalic. The pacing wires are entering through the subclavian. He had a previously created radiocephalic, which was not giving him good flows. Somebody created a brachiocephalic for him and said, your flows are going to get better. But if you're going to have so many catheters sitting in the outflow, you're not going to be able to sustain a flow in this fistula. So essentially what we did for this gentleman was to create a low flow fistula. We closed the brachiocephalic, we plastied his radiocephalic, we took out his a tunnel catheter, left only the pacing wires, and we were able to salvage the situation, and he continued dialysis using his radiocephalic. So these are just two examples to show you how CT venogram can alter the way you create a fistula or give you better options. I'm just going to cover shortly now on maturity. There are two ways to assess maturity. Manish has already covered what is clinical maturity: an easily palpable vein, visible, relatively straight, probably 10 centimeters for a good cannulation segment with a uniform thrill. But what is ultrasound maturity? Probably a vein which is about 6 millimeters in size, depth maybe around 5 millimeters, the more superficial, the better, and a blood flow of about 600 mils. And what are the factors which affect? Clinical, definitely possible. An arterial system, if you can pick up thickened arteries, arteriosclerosis portends a poor outcome in terms of maturity. If you're already able to show central vein stenosis in terms of limb edema and opening up of collateral circulations, you're going to have poor clinical outcome. And obviously those with a poor cardiac output. So these are clinical factors which affect maturity. Vessel sizes. A lot of us will be always wondering, what is the adequate or the correct vessel size where I need to create a fistula? The KDOQI in 2006 said anything which is more than 2.5 millimeter vein and 2 millimeter artery. If you look at the 2019 guidelines, this is not a dictum written in stone anymore. You can create fistulas in vessels which are smaller than 2 millimeters. It all depends on how well you understand the patient's anatomy. But what has been underlined and very clearly told is what is the distensibility of the vein, which essentially means, is there thrombophlebitis in this vein? Is there a good quality vein? So any increase in diameter of the vein with a tourniquet from 1 to maybe 1.6 millimeters causes a change in primary patency from 20 to 80%. So your distensibility, which can be looked at clinically and demonstrated and measured ultrasound, is what is going to change your outcomes. And obviously the artery diameter to be around 2 millimeters. A whole lot of other things do not have any outcomes on maturity. The anesthesia technique you use, whether it's a block, whether it is local anesthesia, whether using interrupted sutures, whether you're applying clips which are not available in India, whether you're instilling local pancreatic elastase, endothelial cells, none of them have shown any outcome changes. I'll talk a little bit about surgical technique towards the end. Arm exercises. I'm not talking of finger exercises, which we ask our patients to do. This is finger exercise. It is not now advised by the KDOQI as the method of exercise. You need to make the patient do arm exercises, preferably isometric exercises with possible proximal obstruction, which is going to show the better outcomes on the fistula, at least radiologically. They have not shown it clinically, but it results in better radiological or ultrasound demonstrable maturity. The fistula assist device, if any of you were there at the Avatar conference last year, will know is probably coming into the market, probably may help us. And there is the first randomized multi-center trial, which is called the PINCH trial, which probably the results will be out this year, which finished occurring in November 2019, on two arms of patients with exercise before and after creation of fistula, which is being documented. And maybe it's a nice trial which we will know whether preoperative use of exercise is of any help. What we are all waiting to listen: can I use heparin? Can I use clopidogrel? Can I use varopaxar, cholecalciferol, glycerol nitrate? No outcomes, no change in primary patencies of use of any of these pharmacotherapeutic agents. Clopidogrel, to an extent, can reduce early thrombosis if you have already had problems in anatomy of the fistula. That's about it. Clopidogrel and elaprost, which is a prostacyclin derivative, is known to produce higher patency rates, but then you have to use it with due consideration in elderly because it causes significant pulmonary vasodilatation. So there's inadequate evidence to suggest this as the method of treatment right now. And on-table techniques like using balloons and maturing the fistula on table probably will get you better patency rates, but you'll end up using these fistulas very quickly and you'll probably have more intervention. So definitely not a technique which should be recommended routinely. Arterial stiffness has been measured. That too has no outcomes. What definitely can tell you whether the fistula may mature is flow volume and resistive index, which I told you about, which I measure in every patient. It may be able to predict maturity, but will not affect maturity directly. So to summarize the whole thing, you go back to doing what Manish asked you to do: a very good clinical examination with a specific focus on the arterial and venous system, cardiac status, vein distensibility, which can be picked up by ultrasound. Surgical technique, the P-slot technique, which was actually propounded by one of the work group members in the KDOQI and therefore was thought to have a high bias, has been ruled out as a recommendation, but is open to a lot of multi-center trials. Maybe the technique can help in better maturity, and exercise definitely is shown to affect the maturity of the fistula. I hope I've covered all the areas which I said I will cover. Thank you so much.